let's start with the view controller side, and at least the controller side. You already have the store controller. We need to start using or at least accessing those stores. So only one part which and a new user or somebody who's not even a store owner can come and use an endpoint that which anybody can use will be maybe store, but again he will have to sign himself up as a store owner. That step anyway will come through the workflow when, let's say, if you are trying to create a store. Let's say if you are an existing customer and if you have to create a store, that'll go to a different altogether different flow, wherever the create step happens. At that point itself we might change the user's role to a store owner or something. So this endpoint, if I have to, let's say, start building that endpoints right now, I go to my API and I create a similar group like this. Maybe I just copy paste. So this is my new group where there is a middleware and a prefix. So these things are going to change now, and I have an API. So I still need a middleware, and it is going to be called store owner. So that's a middleware I'm going to still use, the first middleware. Prefix is going to be called as owner. It's more of a owner store endpoint, and I don't need any of these because these are for admin, and we are now looking at the stores part. So I'm just going to say stores as the endpoint and just going to point to the store controller. So this is going to now start showing all the endpoints needed. So I'm going to run php artisan API routes, and it's going to list all the endpoints available. So just to have one caution here, the store owner is just a role. So if anybody is having a role, let's say a store owner, he can access these endpoints, but then at least these endpoints, but then we should be careful that he's not allowed access to a different user's stores, but he should only be made to access his own store's resources. That's the reason I said we need to create a middleware somewhere here. As soon as the user hits an API using a token or something, we should have a check over here to see whether the user is owning that store or not. Let's say if he's passing an ID on, if it's invalid or if it does not belong to him, we need to directly give a 401 unauthorized to something. If he is valid, then we can go to all of these view controllers which might be needed later. I don't know why there is 2 here. This is not the right one. Maybe I can delete that. And why do I have too many of these? Okay, now it's fine. So all of these resources he can only access if the store is owned by him. So let's get started with creating a middleware, and I can show you why it is needed. So I'm gonna create a middleware, php artisan make middleware, and I'm gonna call it as is store owner. So this is more as a second check after the store owner check. So if I'm not a store owner, I will not be able to create any store at all, or that's the first step. I need to be having that role of a store owner. If I need to again access it, I need to first be a store owner as a role, and then also I need to see whether that store is for me or somebody else's. So that's the next step of check which we do. And if I go to my middleware right now, this is already created. So it's any request coming in, it's going to send as a next step to the view controller. So this is where all the checks are going to start now. Let's say, does the request or at least does the store request belong to the right user? That's a check we are going to do. So as a first step, we have the different you call it the different auth user and everything created. So anyway, the user is going to start this query using an auth token itself. So I'm just going to use that auth and then get the user. So the first step of checking whether the user is existing or not, we already do. If there is no user, we directly can. So this is a good first check itself when using a middleware. If there is no user itself, then we directly say, okay, you can't access this endpoint at all. That's first check. So I can always throw an exception now, throw new not found HTTP exception saying user not found, maybe. So user not found, the first check itself is done here. And there is one more thing we need to do. We need to look at the query, look at the request queries, whether there is any route contains store or not, because all of that the query is going to come as a okay. So if I go back, every query is going to contain something called as a store as an ID. So I'm going to pass ID through this store. Ideally it should be a resource, but then I'm just going to rely on just the ID to be passed. So we need to see whether the route is containing the store or not. That's a check we're going to see to restrict some of the users from accessing. First check. So I'm just going to say route is going to contain store, the one I was showing right now. So it can be empty or it can contain some value. So that is another check. Also I need to check whether the user is already a store admin or not. Easy check is that if, let's say, if not user has what do I call it, is store owner. So if I go to my user, I'm just reviewing it once. So I can just say user has role directly, and I can say whether he's a store admin or not. So I can just check this right away. If he's not a store admin, I can again throw new forbidden, which can be that I just say unauthorized. Maybe I can just throw not found. Maybe I can say access denied because he's not a store owner. Access denied HTTP exception, and I say user does not have the right permission, right role for accessing access. Maybe that's enough, and then I just throw him out, not allowing him to access that specific resource. If let's say all of these steps are maybe covered, if he still has the role, the next step is to see whether with this ID he's having the specific store in his name or not. So that's the next check. So I can always say I'm going to do an exist check on, we already have the user, and we also know that there is a param we had created called stores. So I can always go and check in his store through a where condition, where. So I need a where with a functional condition where I can access a query, which is the builder query, and maybe I pass the store ID which is received, use, pass the store ID as well as the user. So two things passed to this function, and I can then do a query and see. So $query where, what is that I'm gonna check for? So I need to just check for owner ID first thing, owner ID, which we had created to associate the dependency, and then say user.id. Also where I also check, maybe I can do a find right away. Okay, So first check is owner ID check, and then maybe I can end it there. Query is built for the first check because anyway there is going to be a store. And next check is whether if the store ID is existing, if it's not empty, then I can also do a query on it, query.where, and I can just say ID, or I can also do a find, but then now let me go with the ID itself, $store ID. So that's the next step. That's also covered, and then finally I can just say exists. That is actually the final check, whether a store is existing for him or not. If it is existing, then we can go to the next steps. If not, again say if not exists, I just say you are again not authorized to access any of the resources. So I can access denied, HTTP exception, and then I'll give you my message saying maybe that's not your store, or you don't have any stores. So I can ask him, do you want to create one? So with that, I am just politely denying him this access. So that's what is happening here. And if all of these are fine, then if he's already if it is just if the store ID is there, and if it belongs to the same user, then I can just say, okay, now you can do whatever you want because this is your store. So you can go to the next step. So this is the middleware, whatever a middleware has to do. Also, one thing we need to do now is to register this middleware. So let's do that as well. We know that we had done the registration of roller permission middleware some time back. Similarly, for this store owner also, we need to go to the kernel and then register this middleware. So it's very simple. Go here, then say is store owner is the middleware. I'm going to register. I'm just going to say is store owner class, and the registration is done. So it's registered in the kernel, so I can now access those. So where do I use it? I'm going to use it when the API call is going to happen. So somewhere here I need a second middleware. So again, maybe I can create one more group before accessing this endpoints. So I can again maybe say a function or similar, maybe a dollar API, and then group, and pass the middleware first thing. And say, because we are already registered, I can now just say store owner, and then again create a function. I don't need to prefix anything. I can just create a function and access those endpoints again. Oh, there is, okay, that's how I do it. Then create a function over here. I think this is the middleware part, and then the function, and pass the API through that, and include this within this. So first step of securing this is done, but then one thing that we need to do now is to provide an exception to one of the endpoints, which is the store, because I should only be restricting a user who is trying to fetch some record or updating an existing store and trying to delete an existing store. Creation, we should give an exception, because any new user who is already given a role as store owner should be allowed to create a resource which is again a store. So I am going to add an exception here, except I'm just going to say don't limit me for store, which is that store in the sense that function. So if it is a store, don't limit me. So with this, whenever there is a query which is going to come through, it's going to not consider store but rest of the endpoints. But still we need to provide store as an endpoint, as a post, so that it is made available to us. So I'm just going to say stores, and it's going to come through. Maybe I can grab any one of these. Where do I keep? Okay, so this is going to be controller store controller dot store, so storing that store. So with this we will have the endpoints again coming back. Maybe you can run the API routes again, and you can see there's no difference, just that this resource post is going not as any resource anymore, but then it's part of a post request, and it can, any store owner with the role store owner, any user even without having a store will be able to create a store right now, and fetch, update, delete is going to all go through this eStore owner middleware. So that's the condition we have applied right now. So very close. Now we just need to have the implementations of view controller done, which is my first thing is the store controller accessing all the stores. So let's start creating, or at least fetching the stores. I'm just going to say store basic query, it's all stores of the user. So again we need a conditional check here. I need to anyway get the users. Maybe I'll quickly grab those code, because it's a repetitive code. First thing is that whether the user is existing or not. Anyway, we know that the user is existing because we were accessing, even at the middleware we are doing a check, but still we need this user, and then we use that user to get the store right now. So it's very easy to now get the user. All that we need to do is to apply a where condition on the store. So where, we know that the owner ID is an association, and then I just need to pass the user ID to get that store, and then I do a set get. So this should return me all the stores of this user. Not found, https section, user not found. If not, the store should be returned. So return the stores of this user. Let's check that. Let's go log in with one of the users who is having the stores, or maybe multiple stores he's already having. I'm going to go to the table and just see who all are the users who are having stores. So 21 has a couple of stores. I'm going to use the user ID 21, which is doctor somebody. It's all generate. So I'm going to use go and log in. If you don't know, please check the previous episode where we were creating all of these. So I'm going to use that to log in the user. It returns a token. I'm going to use that token. I'm going to keep it at the top as the parent token, and then all the child can access it. So I already have this stores endpoint to fetch all the stores. So ideally this should return at least two stores which the user is having. So you can see that 2 stores are returning. So first part is done. Maybe I can even include some more params to have, let's say with, if I need the store with more things like what do I need, maybe I also need to see who is the owner of the store, as well as who all are the admins of the store. So of those 2 details, if I need, I can do that. It's not returning with owner as well as users. Maybe users, owner, stores. I don't know what's wrong. Is that because there are no stores? Maybe let's do an all and see once. Okay. Stores, store. Oh, I know why. It's running my old instance. I'm still running the previous one. I'm gonna kill the old one, which I was using in the last episode. I mean, I was preparing this and then I was running that same server. I need this server to be running. PHP artisan serve. Now it should ideally get me all the stores. These are namespace declaration has to be very first statement or after any declare call. User not found. Okay, let's see. Let's maybe revert the old code and check once. It's saying store owner line number 3. So there is some issue in our store owner code. Line number 3 namespace. Okay, this is the problem. I had some unnecessary bracket kept there. User does not have the right role for access. So whatever is happening is, let's see. I think he's trying to access a. Because I logged out right now, that's the reason. So I need to log in again with the same user because it was on a different server and the token was generated for that server, right? So I need to again modify this. So I just get a good check anyway. We had that nobody unknown is accessing it. It was on a different server and now restarted the server. It's not allowing. So go back, fetch again. Is the user right? Let's do also validate this code once. It's saying error is user does not have the right role for access. So actually this error is getting thrown. So it's checking for the store admin role and it's failing. So this user does not seem to have the. Okay, if he is not a store admin, we are throwing him out. Store admin. So that's interesting. Let's check once who is the user again. So I go back, I could check for all the users who are having roles of store admin. I think users 16 and 21 are the ones who are having store admin roles. Let's check once that too. 3 is okay. I was keeping it as store admin. It should be store owner. Again, that's the issue. Now access. Yes, it's returning all the details with all the relationship and everything we need. So it's returning now. Let's go back to our view controller, store controller. Query is proper. So ideally this user is only having, I think, couple of stores. That's what it is getting listed here. 1 and 3 is 2 and 3 is with him, so that is getting listed. Now let's also create the we also need the parser, or at least the transformers also. So let's go back to my transformers, copy, rename. Maybe I'll just call this as store transformer, and then get rid of all of the things which are not relevant. Name, details, and then make this as store. Good enough. Get rid of all the other ones, and we might have to also include the dependencies. So let's also do that. User provider. I am in the store controller. Instead of this, I'm going to transform this dot response, and then do a collection on it, and then pass the stores. and point to the transformer, store transformer. I think we did not rename it. We'll go back, store transformer. Now it's okay. That's it. Ideally now it should give me transformed. It's giving me these, but then I can always ask for more through the, I don't need to use this anymore, but I can instead directly use the transformer includes to get more data, so which we can do right now. So I can just say go to my transformer, and then I can do a function include stores, include admin, and it's going to accept my store itself for that $store. Then I can just say $this. It's more of showing that relationship itself. So ideally, what should it be? This dot item. I guess I need to point to the data I need to transform. In this case, it is user. This is the store, and I have the owner. That's my data, and then I just say user transformer, which I can use new user transformer. This should ideally be the first include, where it is giving me the owner of the store. So I go back to my store controller, and then I can just include, set includes over here, set default includes, and then within that array I pass the owner. I guess now this should give me the owner object as well. Okay, through an error. Must be a valid callback. Store transformer does not have a method include owner. I included, I guess, include owner. Okay, I just owner. Okay. What is the reason it's not including? Let me just go back to the documentation of Fractal. So if I have to include, okay, maybe, okay, it's owner itself. I don't need to have this includes because I can always point it at the last moment. Okay. Store. Maybe let's include one more for the admins and then see public function include. Is it includes? Include admins. Store include admins. Store $this collection. Then I pass the store admins users, which is nothing but users which we had created, and then new user transformer. So this should ideally also give us the store admins as well. So if I go back to the view controller, that's the default includes. I'm not sure why it's not working. Let's try it once more. Keep doing that always. This has to have a return, otherwise it's not going to work. Now let's check once. Yep, so that was the mistake. Return was missing, but now it is transforming that whole data. And I think I was trying even this. I don't think this is needed because relationship as and when we access those, it's going to return those data, so you don't need this. So this is fine. So we have created the transformer for transforming the store and with its data, so that is also done. Now next part is we can always try logging in as a user and see whether he's able to access this or not. So maybe let's do that to see whether our API is working or not. I'm going to use this user who's more maybe maybe that is an admin, I guess, but we are not yet given him access yet, but we can always give him access to all the endpoints. But let's try this because I have not given it right now. He should not be able to access any of the resources. So that's one check we are going to do. Come back to access all the stores as a logged in user. It should throw him out. Okay, this is more of a delete. Sorry. Stores. User does not have the right roles. Perfect. So he's not allowed. I can again log in back. So because this is another user, maybe let's go back to creating the creation step. I'm again going to log in as a store owner for creation because that's the only user whom we are allowing right now to create. And we are always giving that endpoint to change a user's role. That will be needed, let's say if you are allowing a user to create a store or something, so we can use that. So I'm again going to go back to this user who's again a store owner and going to log in using his ID again. Token is returned. Copy this, then do this, save it. Again, he should start getting the stores. He has a couple of stores. So let's do the creation part right now. We don't need to create. Maybe the fetch part we can do right now. It's again the same piece of code more or less, just that instead of the first one we are going to call it as checking for the user ID, and then we are just going to say fine. Again we need to pass the ID as well, then so we are going to have that check as well, and then we say find ID, so that is going to return him one store which is his store. And then again we can pass it to the transformer. Instead of the collection, it should be item. So this is the only change which we need. Again, we are trying to see who all are the owners and admins of these stores, so every detail is still there. Checking for the user, fetching the user using the ID, as well as finding the store based on the ID. So this check anyway make sure that this is his store itself, and finally we get the store and try to respond back. So can go to the next one and then say, I think 2 was his store. Fetch, it's giving him the store 2 with owner information as well as ID. If he tries to access any other store, that's not your store, or you don't have access to that store. So this is coming from the middleware which we created. So that's the first check itself, where he's not allowed to do it. Now comes the update part. So this is where he's going to get the store. So somewhere similar code where he's going to get the store, the same kind of update. So he already has the store, so the only check is whether the storage is existing or not. So first check, if not $store, then I say the store does not exist. Throw new not found HTTP exception. store does not exist. So that's the first check, and then if store is existing, then I can update. So because this is more of an update, maybe I'll quickly refer whatever I have done. Gets the store. If the store is existing, then I can apply some rules and check for whether I need to. So if let's say I'm receiving details of the store, so I can just say store name is what. If I'm going to update, then I can get the request and the name of the store. But even before that, I need to see whether if this is empty or not. Empty of request name. If this is not empty, then only I go to the next steps. So if this is not empty, I update it. Even before that, I need to see whether it's going through the proper validation rules or not. So I can say, I can do a check on name and see whether it's a required field. Also, I think it's easier to do a validator equal to validator, which is the support facade, and make this validator pass the data, which is request all. And try to see apply the rule, which is nothing but rule on the name. I am just going to check on the name rule. So required, also whether it is string, also whether it is matching minimum of 3 and max of maybe 30, and maybe also check uniqueness of it with the table stores, and on column which is name. That's it. So this is what my check is in that validator. Why is it giving an error? I don't need this rule anymore, and I can just say if there is an error in the validator, if validator has errors, then I return dollar response, response as a JSON with the dollar validator. It's actually a check on fails. If it is failing, I just send all the errors back. So maybe I can just say errors. Okay, I don't think I need it. Errors is what I need to pass. And then maybe I'll pass 400 bad request or something. Return it. If not, I'm gonna update it. First, I set the value and then go to the next step. Similarly, if it is details which is getting passed instead of name, then I update. I check for details. And minimum, it has to be, maybe I don't need a minimum, but maximum I should make sure that 255 is coming through. And uniqueness I don't need to check for sure. That's only check I might do. So details, if it is details, I set details. So that's also done. So validator is checking and then sending the response back. So 2 checks, and finally if the store is dirty, I check if it is dirty, only then I update it. So I just say $store save. I save it, and then I can now respond back with the response saying message store updated successfully, and then with an ID. Store ID. That's it. So pretty much I return this one now. Return dollar this, or maybe response JSON passing the array, and with 200 because it's an update. So that's my response. If nothing is there to be updated, then okay, I can maybe say if everything failed, and then I can maybe say an array, I can pass message with nothing to update or something. So 200, it just returns a 200, nothing to update. So this is my update code. Maybe we can now see how we can update this. So I'm just gonna say API routes. I'm just need to pass the ID to update. Either it should be details or this one. So I already have something over here, store ID 4. Anyway, this is not the ID of the user, but I'm still going to update it. That's not your store. So I'm going to update 2. So let's check what was the details for table number 2. It was something, so non or occasionality or something. I'm going to update that with my own details. Update 2, store updated successfully. Let's go back, refresh. This is the new best, so that's also getting done. So update is working. Maybe I can also update the store's name. It was something else, so maybe I'm gonna also include name of the store. I'm just gonna say Wishes Superstore, and then I'm gonna update that store. That's also updated. I go back, refresh. Now this store number 2 should be with the name O'Connor Group, instead should be Wishes Store, Superstore. That's also updated. So that works. Let's now do the delete before we create it back. So I'm going to do a delete right now. If it is my store, I should be allowed to delete it. So I'm going to grab all of this, which is just a check, all the same checks. User, there is a store existing, if not through that exception. Otherwise I should be allowed to store.delete. That's it, and then that my store is deleted. So maybe as a safety check, I'll just put the try catch and then capture this within this, so that if there is an error, I should know it. Store is deleted, and then I say HTTP exception, throw that. And then within the delete, after the delete, I'm just going to respond back saying store deleted successfully. I can check this. I can capture this ID, which is the delete ID, then delete that. So I'm going to delete store number 2 for this user, maybe 3 because he's having one more store called 3. I'm going to delete store number 3. I need to pass 3 for delete, and let me also check all the auth inheriting. So it's inheriting that token. I should be deleting it now. Integrity constraint, I cannot delete or update a parent row if foreign key constraint fails. That's because we set up a constraint. These stores are having super admins, so I need to disassociate those, not super admins, but at least store admins. And without with them I cannot really delete it. So one thing I can do is, let's say now let's create a store and try to delete it. So we already have the delete constraint check already done, which is giving me 500, which is good, and I get also a response saying the store cannot be deleted because you have associated store admins there. So that's good. So let's implement the store creation part. So I'm gonna I don't need, I can check for this user anyway for sure, because I need this to associate the user, and I need the rules validation. I'm gonna grab the rules validation right away because we've been using it multiple times. So this is my rules. That means if I am creating a store, I should have required field string minimum 3 maximum, and it should check on the stores table whether it is a unique name or not. If not, if everything is fine, I allow the validation to proceed, and if it fails, I throw that validation error back. So that's a validation error. Maybe I should have captured this even here in my update, where I was sending back the error. Like this, that's fine. So this one step. So validations are all good. Then user, I'm getting the user, and then once that is done, I can start using the user and say stores. Then I can just do a create. That's all I need to do. And then within the create, I can assign do a mass assignment, which is on the name, because validations have already passed. So I can just say name, the request name, and the next part is the details. So creation of a new user, name and details, two things for creation of a table, creation of the user. So that will create the stores, because we are having this association like this. We don't need to really show who is the owner, because this relationship is going to set the owner ID for us. This relationship is nothing but, if you go to the users and stores, it has owner ID mapping. So we are trying to create the store through this relationship, so that because of that, we don't really need to set it separately, like owner ID is equal to this something, but it's going to set it because we are going to create it through the user stories, this part. And final step is to respond back with store creation, and I'm going to grab that code right away. Nothing but a response saying store created successfully, and maybe we can capture the store created over here and then respond back with ID. That is a store created. So we can check this one. So we'll check whether the user is the same and the third table is created under him, or at least the third store is created for this user. So let me go to the creation step, and user need not be a store, or need not have any stores for this to happen. So because he can also be a store owner with a role, but he need not have any stores with him. That's the reason we added an exception over here. So if he did not come through this middleware, but instead he can go through this directly, but only thing is that his role has to be a store owner. So I'm just going to use the same store owner, and I'm going to create a Wish mobile store with some details about the store. So that's what I'm going to do. If you look at auth, it is still inheriting from the parent, so that means the token is going to carry whether he's a store owner or not. And I'm going to create this user right now, store Wish mobile store. This is the third. So store created successfully, ID is 4. So let's go refetch that user. So 2 3 is there, 4 should also be under this user now. Perfect. So user is created, owner is also associated. Like I said, the owner ID we were mapping it. If you go to the database and go to the store, the fourth one is also created under 21. So that mapping is already happening, and that's the reason we are already getting this result right now, which is the third table. So if I go and now just fetch the fourth table, fourth store, then I have this data, whoever has created it. So pretty much whatever I wanted. There are no admins associated right now, but we can have the creation or user created and then changes role to an admin, and then we can associate him to a specific store. So that we can always do. We'll start doing that when we create the front end for the admin. Let's say there are different things a store admin can do. So store owner can access his portal and then start assigning some users as his store admins. So that we can do when we pick up that one. So so this one is also done because there are no admins associated right now. It's easy to delete this store. So I'm going to delete this id 4. It should let me delete. See, so because there are no dependent relationship or dependent admins available, it's allowing me to delete it, and that's also done. So if I go back to my database, you'll see that the fourth table is already deleted. So we have implemented 4 of these endpoints right now. This is what I wanted to pretty much cover in this episode about how to create the store endpoints right now, where you have this all of these endpoints available through a resource, and one exception which is more for knowing that you should only allow the users who are having their stores to be deleted. Instead, you should not allow anybody else who is owning different stores. But even if I am a store owner, I should not be deleting any of the stores, which only a super admin might or may do idly. So this is what I wanted to cover in this one. Maybe it was helpful. More things are coming up. If you can look at the design which I have created, we will start with the branch right now, then go to the product lines, products, creations, associate with SKUs and stocks. So that's pretty much coming soon enough. So keep subscribed, watch out for more. Until the next episode, it's bye from me.